Jiu-jitsu gyms are a dime a dozen, usually popping up at strip malls and dingy dark alleys all around the world. Some of these gyms waste their time on silly things like wrestling that will probably never work in a real fight, while others prioritize elite, super legit self-defense tactics. But no gym is as prominent, controversial, competitive, captivating, and outright entertaining to keep up with as the two top schools in Austin, Texas, New Wave and B Team. And although these two gyms are just a short 24-minute, 15-mile drive apart from one another, they're fundamentally very different in their cultures. And I'm not telling you anything you don't already know when I say that these two gyms are two of the best in the world with the best jiu-jitsu athletes, coaches, and personalities that fans of the sport just can't get enough of. But today I want to try to answer the question, which gym is better, by putting them head to head in a classic old school Texas showdown. They'll be dueling to get the official Josh Jitsu stamp of approval in a comparison of 3 criteria that I've come up with that will help us get to the bottom once and for all. The categories are coaching, achievements, and most importantly,
vibes.
So when it comes to coaching, let's not beat around the bush. John Danaher. Ever since the man heard the words,
"Why would you ignore 50% of the human body?"
he evolved into a half-human, half-transcendental jiu-jitsu encyclopedia. Anybody that ever met this guy will unanimously agree that he came up with the best systems in the world and is the greatest mind in the sport that pretty much solved jiu-jitsu. And it makes sense when you think of what kind of guy he is. Danaher was a PhD philosophy professor at Columbia University before he giga-chatted out and decided to dedicate himself to martial arts 24/7 with literally 0 days off. The guy wears rash guards every single day and literally doesn't have Wi-Fi at his house because he just watches old combat sports reruns in his free time. And if you ask the best grappler in the world how he got so good, his answer is simple.
John Danaher. That's how.
Now, of course, John Danaher is the head coach of New Wave Jiu-Jitsu, so what about B Team? The truth is, they don't really have a primary head coach. According to the B Team website, the coaching staff includes Craig Jones, Nicky Ryan, Nicky Rod, Ethan Krellinston, Seth Bellesley, Belial, Vince Barboza, and JB Bechtelif? Anyways, if we're being totally honest, these guys got really good because of John Danaher. Now, I'm not saying this to undermine their jiu-jitsu skills or their teaching, and I'm sure they're all good instructors, they're just not known for it because they're still active athletes. Danaher, on the other hand, has been limited to coaching and teaching because of his hip and knee injuries for pretty much his entire jiu-jitsu career, which has allowed him to focus full-time on developing just the best talents on his team. Other coaches can't say the same while simultaneously training for their own personal development. Nicky Ryan and Nicky Rod are two of the best talents in the world, and head most of the pro classes at B Team, but between their busy competition and training schedules, it's hard to imagine they're able to dedicate much time individually with each student on the mat when they've got their own problems and strategies to work through for the top competitions in the world with big cash prizes on the line. Ethan Krellinston is only listed as an athlete on the site, which makes me think he doesn't teach often. Craig Jones is spending more and more time out of the States to work with UFC champions Alex Volkanovski and Israel Adesanya, and the other coaches listed on the site don't have the same accolades at this point in their career to be on the same level as the coaching at New Wave. So I'm gonna have to give the edge of the coaching category to New Wave here. The Danaher factor is just too good because they have the best coach in the world whose sole goal is to build up athletes and help students improve by sharing a structured, systematic game. The B Team seems to be more of a self-directed curriculum where some of the best athletes come together to create a great training environment, but it's up to you to come each day with something to work on. You'll get great rounds and pros to bounce ideas off of, but there won't be a monotone, bald-headed doctor in the corner of the room watching over you and guiding you through your journey. In 2022, New Wave and B Team were two of the most represented teams at ADCC, with at least one competitor in each of the male weight categories. But if you compare the achievements of the New Wave athletes to the B Team, it's not even close. New Wave won a total of 4 medals plus the super fight title. 2 golds in the under 88 and over 99 by Giancarlo Bodoni and Gordon Ryan, plus a silver and bronze for Nicholas Marigali in the under 99 and absolute divisions. B Team only won 2 medals, and both were silvers in the under 99 for Craig Jones and over 99 for Nicky Rod. New Wave also had 16 wins and 10 subs total, while B Team had 7 wins and only 3 subs. So at that competition, New Wave reigned king in all departments, and one of the most interesting storylines came from the lesser known athletes on both teams. We all know the big name staples of the divisions like Gary, Gordon Ryan, Craig Jones, and the Nickies, who made up their original DDS that split up in 2020. But both teams also had trial winners that made their debuts at the event event, like New Wave's junior team athletes Luke Griffith and Daniel Monasoyu, alongside B Team's J-Rod and Isaac Michelle, all of who stormed through the ADCC trials only to end up losing in the first round at the championships. As we're approaching 1 year since the 2022 Worlds, these new younger athletes have taken different approaches to staying busy for the next Worlds. New Wave have remained active, sending athletes to the brand new ADCC Opens that were introduced in 2023 and have been dominating. Both Luke Griffith and Big Dan are ranked number 1 and 2 pound for pound on the official ADCC Open leaderboards and have 4 fighters in the men's top 15, with Oliver Taza at number 8 and Giancarlo Bodoni at number 12. Not only that, but they also have the number 1 pound for pound female ranked fighter in the 16-year-old prodigy Helena Craver, who's been completely unstoppable on the local scene and no doubt will be a hot prospect for the next year's Worlds. B Team, however, is nowhere to be found on these pound for pound rankings. They too have been sending athletes to events like ADCC Open and other big high profile competitions, even internationally, and they found wins here and there, don't get me wrong, but they just don't seem to have quite the same level of certain success as New Wave does with the lower profile fighters. But recently, a chink in the impenetrable armor of New Wave started to show, and this was at the UFC Fight Pass Invitational, where for the first time ever, B Team may have come out on top. At the event, Nicholas Marigali won a pretty close, fairly boring match against Cyborg in overtime. Craig Jones also won in a similar way, beating Felipe Pena in overtime, so the score was 1 for New Wave and 1 for B Team. Okay, and if you want to consider that Helena Cravar won her match too, technically it's 2-1, but let's ignore that for now. What edged the night in the favor of B Team was the unbelievable performance that Nicky Rod put on in the final against Big Dan. Both had won 2 matches in the tournament to make it to the finals. Nicky Rod winning his match by a very slim margin in OT, and Big Dan dismantling his opponents, beating them all dominantly by submission to go into the main event with a ton of momentum. And despite Nicky Rod's size disadvantage, he was able to not only survive the attacks that took out the 2 previous opponents, but passed Big Dan's guard twice and stayed in control of the match for the regulation period. Then moving into the overtime period, Nicky Rod showed a side of him that we've never seen in the way he handled adversity. When in Big Dan's extremely deep armbar where anybody would have tapped, he fought through the pain to escape in a very reminiscent way to how another one of the greats did in this rule set many years ago in a legendary New Wave versus B Team clash.
He's going for it. He's got it tight. Gordon is not tapping. Gordon will not tap. He's corkscrewing and he's out. Unbelievable.
Then, Nicky Rod finished the fight off with a rear naked choke in the final period to secure the win. And I gotta say that this performance showed that Nicky has that dog in him more than I ever realized he really did. So, who is the better achieving team? I think again, this category would have to go to New Wave in a pretty clear margin, but things are starting to get a lot closer. The final category we have to look at is just the overall vibes of the 2 teams. From an outside perspective, it's pretty clear that B Team is revolutionary in the way that they're marketing their gym. Through pretty much all social media platforms, they've promoted themselves as an accepting, fun, and yet still highly competitive environment that they literally invite people to come and visit all the time.
If you guys are ever traveling through Austin, make sure you come and stop by.
They're constantly hosting high-level visitors from other domains to train with, and obviously any practitioner is itching to travel to the B Team and experience it for themselves. New Wave, on the other hand, is much less active on social media and doesn't share their day-to-day with the world, so it's much harder to say what the vibes are. From the minimal clips we've seen of the room, it seems like they just train super hard and gear up for their competitions under the watchful eye of John Danaher. There's much less of, well, this going on. But all I have is my outsider's perspective, so I wanted to bring in an expert with first-hand experience in both of these gyms to really tell me how the vibes are. So I've asked fellow YouTuber Tyler Spengler, who's got a great gym tour series where he visited some of the best gyms across America, including both New Wave and B Team. By the way, do you like the gear Tyler's wearing? It just happens to be from xmarshall.com, who offers so many designs that I dare you to say you can't find one you like. The quality is amazing, and I recently wore one in a competition and had no idea it boosted my back take stat by 50%. Pretty much guaranteeing my spot on the podium. If you want to check out their gear for yourself, please go to the link in my description and use code JoshJitsu at checkout for 10% off. Alright Tyler, so thanks for being here. Can you tell me a little bit about your time at New Wave?
The thing about New Wave is it's within Henzo Gracie gym, because they have a secret private facility for like the pros. But nonetheless, when I was at New Wave, I had Gary Tonin teaching me for the day, and he was a really good teacher, though if you expect to go to class on time, definitely don't be thinking about that in New Wave. We started like 45 minutes late, which was totally strange for me with the $50 drop in. I will say it was weird to me that they didn't really have too much rolling. It was all situational sparring, which is great for development and whatnot. But if I'm making a video, not really the best for that.
I just picture like going to New Wave and just being under the eye of, John. You could just feel his presence, watching you on the mats. But did you feel that at all with Gary? I'm sure it's a very similar teaching style to what John would have, right?
When it came time to the actual moves and showing how the moves worked, he spoke exactly like John. He had extremely concise details on how to do the moves, and it was really helpful for, getting the moves accomplished, doing it with your partner, and having a good understanding of how it all worked. As far as when it came to repping time, I don't want anybody to shoot me for this, but Gary was a little bit preoccupied just on his phone and whatnot. He did have a fight coming up, so he's talking to doctors at the same time, but it was more so just work on your own, and if you have questions, ask them later.
I just think of John Danaher and the secret sauce. Obviously his students are going to be very technical, very high level. Did you feel like there was like kind of almost a meta level of move sets where people were very high level and that like technique that kind of caught you off guard?
Just say all around, when I went to Texas, there's a huge meta difference compared to like where I trained in Minnesota and many other states I've been to. Everybody's just a much higher level athlete, at least in Austin anyway, because it's kind of the mecca for the pros at the moment with, like you're talking about, New Wave and B Team and other gyms. Even compared to Vegas, the level all around was higher in Texas. So that gym definitely felt stronger. I'm not going to say it's anything out of this world unless you happen to be going up against pros directly, but yes, definitely a much higher skill level there.
Do you find like the dominance of the New Wave athletes and the competitors and like sort of the intensity of the team is kind of like a deterrent for casual, maybe grapplers who compete on like the local level to, kind of come in and check it out and be a visitor there?
I think it's definitely two different camps where if you want to be a visitor, they'll accommodate to you 100%. I mean, everybody loves money and they understand how to run a business and they do it really well. So they have the people that will accommodate the beginners and it's not too daunting. But at the same time, if you ever want to take the sport seriously, you do have the guys that will work your ass off, and that will be far more daunting and hard to overcome.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your time at B Team.
When I went to the B Team, I tried contacting them like 1,000 times, calling them, Instagramming, blah, blah, blah. That was before Craig's video saying to just show up. I really wanted to figure out the best time to train there. And after getting 0 responses, I just found a time slot on their website. I'm like, all right, I'm just showing up here. We'll see how it goes. It was definitely a different feeling compared to New Wave. It was a lot more laid back. And apparently that's because I went to the night class and almost no one trains the night class. Again, if you have no way to contact them, that's almost impossible to figure out. The people were way more relaxed, not really repping the moves that much smaller class all around. Nick Ortiz, right? He's the one that just left the B Team, or he had those issues. He was the guy teaching. He didn't help me out once. He didn't show. I was struggling because I'm not a huge footlocker and we were going over false reaps. The dude saw I was struggling and he did not give a shit. So I was just like, okay, whatever. But I figured it out eventually.
So I know you didn't get a chance to train with any pros, but was there like a really high level of like kind of athlete in the gym there? Like I know they seem to have people dropping in all the time, but maybe not at the night classes that you attended.
It was nothing crazy for professionals or like higher level athletes. I definitely want to go back to Texas for like a noon class and then train with Craig. I mean, Craig already gave me an invite anyway, so I just got to be able to time it at the right time where he's there, not traveling or helping somebody else, so I can get the rolls in with him, hopefully pay him enough to guillotine him, and that'd be a good video.
So I picture B Team as kind of like a melting pot where like people from all over are always coming in, and like obviously like high level like UFC guys are always in there, it seems like, and like D1 wrestlers, all that sort of thing. But it seems like they really kind of invite visitors too. Do you think like the level of technique and like the level of competitor that's in there is kind of watered down because they have so many people there? Or
I mean, I wouldn't say watered down. Usually when you get a lot of high level athletes all going to one place, you have two ways to look at it, where you can get the best moves from everybody or the worst moves from everybody. And typically it turns out you're going to get the best moves from everybody. When I go to a new gym, I want to perform well, so I'm doing guillotines. When so-and-so goes to a gym, maybe they're an expert in arm bars, you can almost guarantee they're going to be trying to hit arm bars on everybody. So I typically think when you have those high level athletes, it's probably the opposite of being watered down. They want to perform well. They want to show other people why they belong there, and they're going to pull out their best moves the whole time. Another point quickly, just, comparing New Wave to B Team, is that like the facility at B Team is a lot more accommodating for people to constantly come in. It's way bigger. New Wave is really small. Like, I would not be surprised if they had less than 1,000 square feet of mat space compared to the B Team. It's just mats full of people.
To me, it seems like a tough decision. Like, if I had to pick one, especially when like the full teams are there, right? If you have John Danaher and Gordon and all those guys, and then you have Craig Jones and, Nikki and all those guys, like, do you pick to go and be under John Danaher and try to get like a lesson from, the best mind in the sport? Or do you go and try to get maybe a round with, a pro at B Team? Would you say that you kind of would choose one to go back with versus the other, or would you recommend both to kind of anybody?
I would recommend that you do both just to get an experience for the two. However, I'd say if you want to get overall better jiu-jitsu, you should go to the B Team, but of course, not to the night classes. Go to the noon classes or morning, just not the night ones. At New Wave, they have New Wave classes with John and whatnot, but they're still taking the main minds and they're putting them at Roca, right? And nobody else can get there unless they're invite. You can have the best brains at the B Team just by paying your $50, or you can pay $50 a New Wave, hope they show up, hope they're not splitting their training, something like that.
Okay, so there it is, folks. The final verdict on vibes from Tyler is leaning towards B Team as a better overall environment, because it gives you the opportunity to meet and train with pros while taking lessons from them and being in an overall better, easygoing facility. One thing that surprised me to hear is just how private the pros are at New Wave. I didn't really realize that the Roca facility you see New Wave training in is not open to the public, but it turns out the primary members of New Wave are in a completely different location than the non-Death Squad members. And that right there is another thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way. The idea of this junior squad that Danaher kind of doesn't really take accountability for. If you haven't heard about this, John is constantly calling pretty much any athlete that hasn't won Worlds a junior athlete, including guys like Luke Griffith and Big Dan. For reference, they're 22 years old at 6'5", 235 and 6'7", 286, and have both made it to the ADCC World Championships. So there's absolutely nothing junior about them. It somewhat feels like a cop-out where Danaher says, oh, Big Dan lost to Nicky Rod, and that's because he's just a junior member. Once he beats Nicky Rod, then all of a sudden he's on the main team and I'll claim him as mine. Jiu-jitsu is a really scary sport to compete in, and to feel confident, you really want to have the full support of your team and your coaches behind you. And although these guys are in the room training every day just like the senior members, they're considered a class below. Those are bad. And over time, as these younger guys start to mature, they might be upset with this type of treatment, and that can cause more tension internally for the team. And we know what happened when there was tension in the team last time.
The Danaher Death Squad is no more.
I think there are two final decisions I can make after analyzing both teams. The first is that New Wave Jiu-Jitsu is the best in the world at the moment when it comes to no-gi grappling. From the level of coaching, the dominance and competition for their athletes, even you junior members, there's no one winning or submitting opponents quite like they do. But if you train, you'll probably never get to experience that. It takes a real outlier to penetrate the bubble of the New Wave team and get recognized by John Danaher. If we're being blunt, they're all freaks and value winning over anybody else in the world. They've truly sacrificed everything to be where they are, and unless you're a freak that's willing to do the same thing, all you can do is sit back and watch. The second thing is that B Team might be the best answer for the non-freaks out there that just want to experience an elite level room. Don't get me wrong, B Team has some serious freaks too, but they're a lot more balanced athletes and welcome all comers to visit and check out the training room while the freaks are in session. You won't be training with the greatest coach or pound for pound grappler in the world at B Team, but at least you can settle for second place, pun intended. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my analysis. Let me know down below if you think there's anything I missed in this breakdown, and tell me which of the two gyms would you visit if you were ever in the Austin area. And I want to give a huge thank you to Tyler Spangler for helping me make this video. Go check him out if you haven't already, because without him, this video is just a guy in his room who's talking about two gyms he's never been to. If you want to see more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.